Okay, stream is now live. We go ahead and pull the YouTube up. And from there, I will grab the YouTube link that we will use to post, as opposed to the link that would allow them to join. As opposed to. Okay. Okay, link is out whenever you're ready.
Ready.
Cool. Okay, 3, 2, 1. All right, welcome on back to another edition of the Baltimore Beatdown podcast. It is Tuesday, May 12th. My name is Jake Luke, and I'm joined by Spencer Schultz. It's been a week or so, right? Here we are.
It has been a week. We are in that dry spell, that dirty stretch, post-draft, even knowing exactly where the NFL is going to go from here, what timetables will be. The Saints canceled their mini camps and all that good stuff like a month ago. So we'll see what it ends up being. We've had some time to marinate and seen a couple small moves go on, but we're in it for the long haul as usual.
Yeah, dry spell, can't relate. But yeah, we are kind of getting into that that sort of period that we were talking about a little bit there, where the draft was what we had to look forward to for a while. We did a lot of looking forward to it. We basked in it when it happened. Basked. I pronounced that word weirdly. Sue me. But yeah, it was a great time. It really took our mind off things for a weekend, and then the ensuing week after. Now kind of not really a whole lot going on, and we're trying to push some content, but thankfully a star player on the Ravens is giving us some great content, and his brother, and some other lovely individuals. The NFL schedule was released. There was I think a 3-hour TV program on it. Some people bitching on Twitter about that. It's like, okay, like if you don't want to watch it, don't watch it. Like, I think it's
exactly. If it's not for you, don't worry about it. It's not like it was like you had to wait until 11:58 p.m. to see game 17 of the freaking Seahawks schedule. Like, the schedule was released ahead of it. They did a 3-hour show touching on it, which is fine.
Yeah, and there's I get annoyed when people complain about that kind of stuff in regular years, but like this year there's literally nothing going on, and like it doesn't affect you to begin with. And I mean, there's new NFL fans coming into the fold every single year. Maybe they haven't seen something like that. So for the newer people, maybe that's something cool. But yeah, we're kind of getting into the content suck, as it were. We're starting to venture into the evergreen content a little bit. Voss and I did the first episode of our new Back in the Day format that we're doing, which is basically just a rewatchables ripoff of old Ravens games and events. First up was the 2003 Ravens-Titans wildcard matchup, which I thought was a really fun game and a fun episode.
It was, and that game was so, like, just the opening, Ray Lewis walking out of the tunnel, that was like in his heyday, his 250 tackle year, and just watching him come out, and the way that, like, I don't know, being fortunate enough to go to Ravens games throughout my childhood, the way that other teams would kind of bend and look and watch his entrance as like this. There has never been a bigger polarizing figure defensively with that kind of like star power to them in that way, like on game day, and just watching like the energy that he brought to the stadium, the way the stadium reacted, and you can hear the heap at in the big catch all the way at the end. That was an awesome game, awesome game. And it's just ironic. And then looking back at, all the great battles between the Titans back then, and then what happened this past year, and then now the Ravens are going to end up getting that rematch this year. It just adds more juice, and juice is good.
Yeah, it's funny because like when the AFC Central was going on, and then I guess at the time that it had become the AFC North that year, they were kind of the Steelers for a while for the early 2000s there, as far as a divisional opponent that was, equal in stature and strength to the Ravens, and they were going to give them a tough fight every time. Ravens got the better of them most of the time, but that was one where they actually wound up losing. So I thought it was interesting in that they lost the game, and it's kind of a fun bookend in that the Ravens lost to the Titans in the playoffs this year. A lot of fun. I know I'm just an absolute master of fun basking in old playoff losses, but yeah, I thought it was cool to go back and revisit.
That was a fun game. Will Demps, man. Will Demps.
That was sick. That pick six, I was like, damn, like I didn't even really have much memory of him, but like when I saw that, I was like, damn, this guy must have been a little bit of a player. The broadcast I thought was freaking hilarious. So it was really fun to go back to that. And we're going to have some good ones coming up for you guys shortly.
Right. It was a lot of fun. And Will Demps just fits into that Ed Reed sidekick with Haruki Nakamura, Zibikowski, Dewan Landry, like a lot of classic Jim Leonard, a lot of classic kind of Robins to Ed Reed's Batman there that had some pretty fun roles and a lot of fun games. So that was one of my favorites of that part of the game.
Yeah, you got to love the underrated sort of utility safety that's just like looks a million times better because they're playing next to Ed Reed, but they're also grinders in their own right. So it's good to see them get some shine. And that was a fun game. A lot of turnovers, including Reed getting a pick himself. So go back and watch that and then listen to the subsequent podcast episode if you have not already. But I guess that's enough talk about that. Before we get into the news that we haven't covered yet that came out last weekend, is there anything else we want to touch on first?
DJ Fluker officially signed and figures to, be in that starting rotation potentially. I guess, it makes sense that a vet might end up getting the nod in the sense that it's going to be a shortened training camp, a shortened, learning curve, learning process, able to get up to speed. So if that ends up being the case, there's not a traditional training camp. You would anticipate Fluker maybe being that guy, but then Larry Walford from the Saints cut. So I thought the Ravens might go ahead and maybe pull a Ryan Grant or a Michael Brockers and maybe rescind, but they didn't end up going that way. And maybe it's for the best. I mean, Fluker, I've watched a little bit more tape on. He's going to bring some nastiness to him that he will be able to beat up on guys. He doesn't have the technical prowess of obviously a Yanda or some of the better guards in the league, but he's going to be able to be thick body next to Orlando Brown on double teams, and that's going to be a righteous way. It seems like a lot of times runs to that side of the line were dominant, and I think that Fluker has potential to really work some combo blocks with Orlando Brown. Those two are thick as hell. So interesting to see, and maybe he ends up being that starting right guard this year.
So as opposed to strong side this year, the right side is going to be called the righteous way.
The righteous way.
Had Eric just text me and ask, is Spencer ripped? He looks high as fuck.
Ripping these bad boys.
There you go. There's your answer. So just, crushing a couple crispy boys on a Monday night. What's wrong with that? I have very squinty eyes always. I don't think they look. Don't let him get in your head. Don't make him make you self-conscious here. Okay.
I'm always ripped one way or another. I don't need uppers or downers. I'm just ripped.
I misunderstood him at first. I texted him back. I was like, no, he's more bulked up. Like he just lifts and drinks a lot of beer.
Dad bod. I'm dad bod. Man strength is coming on. I'm getting close to 30. I've always wanted dad strength, man strength. I think I'm starting to get there.
I was gonna say I think you're probably on the cusp, if not already flirting with it. But yeah, I guess so. The Fluker signing we're touching on there, it's going to be the righteous way on that side of the line. Kind of does feel like, and I think Jeff Z was throwing out there that he is going to be the favorite to take over for Marshall Yanda there on that right guard spot. But I mean, there's so much competition at this point. I mean, they draft two guys. You got Powers still in the mix there, and then some other guys that are just kind of floating around as well. Makari, Skura, all these dudes that are just going to be vying to start on the interior O-line. It feels like if they don't have star power, they at least have a lot of bodies to throw at the issue. Competition,
Depth is how you address a loss like that. And I'm just glad the Ravens went that route, getting Fluker, getting Bredesen, retaining Skura, getting Tyree Phillips, who we're not quite sure what he's going to be yet and where he's going to factor in to the offensive line equation, but having that versatility, that positionless football, that Ravens ideal versatility is the name of their brand. So I'm excited to see how it ends up playing out, and I hope they're able to get a good substantive, I can't think of the right word, I'm blanking now.
Substantive.
Yep, training camp and able to make sure that they're healthy and all that good stuff. And I think it's really difficult right now. I mean, I'm thinking about all the baseball kids right now, kids that are on the cusp of maybe getting into, the college scouting world and the draft world, and not being able to have arm maintenance, like, is going to be really detrimental to them. Not having your hamstrings ready to go for training camp at any level of football. Like, we could end up seeing, let's say, there's an abbreviated training camp and they try to get right into the swing of things. Hammies are going to go out left and right. Like, there's going to be a lot of bumps and bruises and injuries. Maybe not so much. I don't know about the ACL stuff or any of that or the impact of that, but I just know that if you try to rush back into it too quick, you're gonna
ACL probably wouldn't be something like that, because that's just a kind of an injury that's just happens as opposed to like a chronic thing. So like a break and a ligament tear. Ligament tears typically aren't like that unless they've already happened once before. So
right. And yeah, it can be totally random with that. But as far as, tightness, hammies, hampered, kind of those quick injuries that kind of take you out of the equation for 2 to 4 weeks, it feels like, it's a pretty big possibility. And just in the general sports world, I mean, the big thing right now coming out of the NBA is, Shaq made some ripples the past couple of days saying that he believes the NBA should just scrap this season. And I don't think that's a terrible idea. I mean, it's a shortened season. By now we would be, almost getting to the playoffs.
We're getting close to that point. I mean, the finals would be next month, basically.
Exactly. So it's going to be an asterisk season either way. And maybe it's best to let them go back through and warm up and get healthy and do all that, and then just bring it again. So I don't know. I'm kind of in favor of that, but I just want to make sure that guys are getting prepped right. Guys are able to get back up to speed, because especially in football, I mean, it's a dangerous sport where you can have a lot of very major negative impacts happen with hamstrings and with things like that start to hamper you and linger for a really long time. So I'm sure these guys are doing some sort of maintenance, but I hope they just don't rush them back into actually playing. And they're at the highest level, so I'm sure they'll take good care of that and all that good stuff. But it's just interesting times right now, and that's another factor of it.
We are living in very uncertain times. That's very true. Astute point of view. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like sports, it kind of does feel like some of them we're gonna have to punt on, like maybe NHL and NBA. Baseball is kind of a will they or won't they type thing. There seems to be optimism in some corners, pessimism in others.
I would be all for an 82 game baseball season. All for that.
I'm all for that in a regular year. We have enough baseball games. People figure it out. Yeah, I mean, it seems like golf is definitely sort of easing its way back in, maybe starting with these couple fluke events that they're going to have throughout May, and then start getting back into the real swing of things with the tour in June. As for other sports, I mean, it's kind of hard to predict because summer is kind of sports strapped to begin with. So you have baseball going on typically, and then everyone sort of gears up for the end of summer with training camp. So I feel like maybe training camp is going to be that first big litmus test as far as just bigger sports for the end of the year and, heading into 2021. We're going to see what happens. Pretty optimistic that they're going to figure something out with the NFL. There's just too much money at stake. And, you got to think that with a couple of months to prepare, they could find a way to maybe quarantine these guys, maybe pull a little Mike Ehrmantraut clearing a warehouse out for a bunch of Germans type situation. Shout out to Better Call Saul. Balls deep into that. Great recommendation.
Ooh, the best. One of the best shows I've ever seen to this point, at least. But yeah, I mean, and it's interesting because Kirk Cousins actually made a comment that got a little bit of hate, a little bit of criticism, saying it was maybe, in poor taste a little bit. But he was saying, I think it was right around the draft. He said, I think it would be really interesting because a lot of these guys in this sport at this level have not played in front of an empty, a small crowd or an empty stadium. And you can laugh and say, the Redskins or the Jags, or whatever, but they haven't played in front of no one.
I haven't seen that joke going around on Twitter.
Yeah,
people making jokes about empty stadiums and teams with poor records.
But still, there's still 20,000 people there. Like there's still. I know.
I'm just calling out the people that you're not being original with that joke. Everyone has made that joke, whether it's in their heads or actually on Twitter. We all know. Let's get a little more creative here.
Yeah,
Not to be the joke on
brighten it up,
purpose.
guys. Come on,
I'm not
let's
above.
elevate. Let's elevate.
I'm not above a bad joke here and there, but that one is just the lowest of low hanging fruit.
Thinking about Dan Snyder ripping out 20,000 seats from his stadium to not get blacked out on TV is just not even a joke. It's just so sad.
It's kind of sick.
It is kind of sick.
It's
When
like-
you go
it's
there
like
and you
a
just see
little
those
Kim-
big overhangs, and you're
It's a
like,
little Kim Jong-un situation where it's like, I'm just going to Streisand effect this thing, or like the reverse Streisand effect, and just like, oh, you're not firing me. I quit. I'm going to take away these seats. So you're not going to see fans not coming to my games. I like it.
it's fantastic. And the way that Dan Snyder has effectively created a little dictatorship of that area, of that no man's land, FedEx Field,
Raljon.
Landover, Maryland. What Landover, Maryland is very North Korea-esque, to be honest.
I love it. I feel for Redskins fan friends. I definitely have a few, and
So we're gonna get to see again preseason at Redskins, then a regular season game at Redskins. I think a month later. So big ups to FedEx. Get some Chase Young, some Dwayne Haskins, some scary Terry McLaurin. That's gonna be fun times.
Yeah, they've got Redskins for week 4, and they have them in week 4 of the preseason. So it's literally a month apart.
That's awesome. I'm excited for that. I hope it's able to function properly. But yeah, we'll get into some schedule talk. But
You got to think that place is going to be, if they do not get off to a flying start, the Redskins, that place is going to be over half purple in week 4.
it still will probably be half purple either way.
Yeah, new coach, young quarterback that some people are excited about, young new franchise cornerstone player.
Absolutely.
Redskins fans, I think they're passionate. I wouldn't blame them if they were like, and I'm just done committing money.
I don't think they're passionate. I think that they are like numb at this point, and they they expect failure. It's like when I was 15 years old and watching the Orioles,
like caring to that point. But I feel like they still watch at this point. Like
for sure.
I will admit that I fall off of watching the Orioles like at least halfway into the season. Like I feel like they're still watching their team at like,
I don't think like week 12. I think a lot of Redskins fans are kind of like,
some of them definitely do. Some of them do, but I do know some of them.
If they're like a football fan that passionately does like fantasy and stuff, but a lot of people I know.
Shout out to my bud Zach, who you met last preseason. He goes to every game regardless. But they have nice seats and everything, but like still, he's
a great time there.
Finding reasons to like go, and I'm just like, man, like you'll get there.
I just feel for them, and at the same time, I think they're very just generally turned off. It feels like the way I felt about the Orioles when I was 15, and that's why I like find so much interest in the Redskins situation, because I can actually empathize with it to a degree, and I just always find it interesting. And they just always, when you start talking Redskins fans always start shaking their head in like a sad disapproval of what has happened from such a kind of great legacy of a franchise through basically our lifetime. They have just been so pitiful, and it's interesting to watch.
Yeah, it's a tough scene for sure. But yeah, Redskins on the docket twice for the Ravens schedule, which we will be getting into after we, of course, discuss the interesting bit of news that came down last week. I believe it was last Wednesday night. Ravens safety Earl Thomas. So going through the timeline, basically, I was sitting in bed. I think I had started Better Call Saul. I was on like episode 1. And I'm just kind of settling in, relaxing. I'm like, yeah, nothing's really going on. I'm scrolling Instagram, and a video of shirtless Earl Thomas comes up. Basically, he kind of... and
he's always shirtless.
He is, but like the way that he was talking to the camera, like I had my sound off or whatever, and I scrolled past it, I think, and then I did a double take. I was like, wait, what was he doing there? Why was that caption so long? He's always just like posting highlights with no caption. So I go back and I start watching it, and immediately my heart just sinks. I'm like, oh, fuck. And I go and I tweeted out basically like a summary of what he had said, and people really started to pick it up and catch on to it. Not to say that I was the first, of course, but I feel like I was one of them. Crossed the 1,000 mark on the Twitter account too. So shout out to me. But yeah, he basically goes into this situation about how he's pissed that TMZ got a hold of this news and they're going to be running it. And it's a altercation that took place between him and Nina, which I didn't even throw like his wife in there because I didn't want to presume anything. But immediately your mind just goes to Ray Rice when he puts that out.
Mine jumped to Tyreek Hill because it was just last year. and I think it was right around the exact same time, like May-ish, right at post-draft. I might be wrong on that, but I just jumped to that, and I was just like, oh, I just immediately knew that this was something I'm not going to stop hearing about, and I of course assumed the worst, like you were saying, but I was just not excited for whatever was to come. Um, it ended up being so preposterously seeming fictitious, like a written story almost, the actual event that occurred. But I was anticipating something way worse as far as something that he had done. And it also just always throws me for a whirlwind because of two things: that there's videos of this and the way that the media can get a hold of something and TMZ can get a hold of something, and then thinking about how it might have been, in the 80s and 90s with a similar situation. And then I also always just jump to Des Bryant's situation where allegedly Jerry Jones paid 7 figures to suppress a video of him in a domestic situation or a not great seeming situation. And those two things always run through my head whenever something like this happens. But I was just so immediately disappointed that the Ravens were going to have to hear something like this. And then all of the kind of crap that Earl Thomas had taken from the Titans game and the stiff arm and him saying
it's been a tough couple months for your boy.
Yes, has been a tough couple months on the old Twitter sphere. But in the end, weird situation, but it's crazy. I mean, you never know. It doesn't seem like the NFL has been out to get the Ravens. Maybe like there used to be the rumors like that, and how Tagliabue wanted a museum and didn't like the franchise after. But crazier things have happened.
Odell was the same way with the Colts, and then Tagliabue did the same thing with the blocking ball team. So we actually just kind of fact. Although I do think Rog has been pretty pro Baltimore, to be fair.
100%. He's definitely been pro Baltimore, and I
From
think
the area to a certain degree, I believe.
Yeah, and also I think the NFL really likes the Lamar Jackson experience, and I feel like they have pushed him into the spotlight. And say what you will, but I think that they have a way of manipulating kind of superstars and success to a degree, whether big or small, I don't know. But I think that they've definitely propelled Baltimore. But just having that resurface was not fun. And
I mean, he puts that out there. TMZ, I believe, maybe an hour or two later, Ravens Twitter completely on fire at this point. Just speculating about what it could be. Some people trying to say how it's maybe not going to be a big deal. Don't invoke the Ray Rice thing here quite yet. Some other people kind of worrying the worst. And then TMZ leaks headline: Cops, Earl Thomas, NFL star held at gunpoint by wife, ellipses, in blow up over alleged cheating. So I start reading this and we got to get a soundboard to get the Tim the Toolman Taylor thing, because as soon as I'm maybe a paragraph in and it's just So NFL star Earl Thomas is lucky to be alive after cops say his wife held a loaded gun less than a foot from his head after she allegedly caught him cheating with another woman. So that's the first block. And then it goes into the story about how, I believe the long and short of it is that Nina gets home. Some sort of fight ensues because she's angry about Earl maybe drinking a little bit too much. He hightails it out of the house, doesn't want to deal with it. I think he goes to meet up with his brother Seth at
Seth picked him up.
So Seth picks him up. They go to this other house in Austin, Texas, where he lives in the off season, with 2 women. And the way that the story was circulating was that Earl and Seth proceed to have a foursome in the same bed with these 2 women. That's about as cleanly as I can put it.
Twitter ran with it to the point where it was like there was not even a girl there almost. They wanted to say it was 2 brothers in bed. And there's that clip of Key and Peele. I don't know if our followers have seen that or if you or our listeners have, or if you've seen that, but there's a clip of Key and Peele where they're partaking in one woman together, and the guy's like, "Come on, bro, give me a high five." And then he grabs his hand and he's making eye contact with him and doing that whole thing. And Twitter had a field day with this.
It was really funny. The thing about this situation is I'm just really glad that it wasn't another serious thing. And once this article comes out where you read through it and essentially So yeah, like we mentioned, there was the inaccuracy that they're having this like foursome in the same bed. It actually wound up that they were in two different rooms, Earl with one woman, Seth with another. But
there's one key letter that is a word, I suppose, technically, that was not used, and a phrase. It said Earl and Seth were in bed,
yeah, that's what it was. That's why people ran with
but
it.
not in a bed.
No, yeah, I thought the same thing. I was like, oh no, like this is looking bad for him. Wound up not being that, but Nina tracks where he is with his Snapchat location. Fellas, watch
She
out.
logged into his Snapchat, and then that's where she like caught wind of the situation. I mean, the part of it that's ridiculous. Like when you tell the
Oh,
details
just
of
the
the
one
story,
part of this that's ridiculous.
like as a whole, like the part of it that tickles me is that like Earl is like 30,
Yeah,
and I'm
turned 31.
yeah. So I'm like imagining, I've heard there used to be some crazy stuff that would happen with like girls that and guys that you're friends with, and there's a cheating situation when you're like 19 or 16 or whatever, and like the girl's like ah! And the guy's like "Ah." But at this point it's just a little preposterous. It's some young bull stuff.
Yeah, so essentially, so she tracks to where he is, takes a gun with her. In the spirit of trying to scare him, she says she unloads it, brings it into the house, and confronts him in the bed, I guess, with this other woman. They get into this sort of fight, I guess verbal altercation. She points it at his head, not realizing that there is actually a bullet in the chamber. So he came very close to eating it just right then and there. But I guess he like wrestles the gun away from her, runs out into the yard. Cops have already been alerted. I guess it was a large fight that the neighbors maybe were clued into. And then Nina gets arrested. Let me see what the exact charges were. I don't want to mess this up.
Burglary. I know burglary.
Okay, so after speaking with everyone, cops ultimately arrested Nina and both members of her posse. So she had a posse. That's kind of sick. Nina was booked for burglary of a residence with intent to commit aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, family violence, and later bonded out. So that's what she was charged with there. And ultimately, like, that's basically the extent of it. And it sounds like this happened over a month ago. Another wrinkle to it is that Earl did not inform the Ravens, which they don't sound overly pleased about, understandably. But so this happened over a month ago. He confirmed in that video that he initially leaked that they're already talking, and he's seen the kids and everything, and they're kind of working through it, I guess, at this point. But yeah, like you said,
Sounded like it might not be a first time occurrence.
Yeah, but yeah, you said that it's just like young guy type of shit, and like I'm totally with you. Like even when Earl first signed with the Ravens, I guess when he was 29 last year, I noticed right away on his social media that he was a little bit of a party boy, which
had no clue before.
No, neither did I.
No clue that he was. I mean, whatever that speaks to. I'm going to be doing the same things. I wish I could do the things that he did. Like I remember
it's just based on his reputation from Seattle as like this super hard worker,
very serious,
and down to business. Like you wouldn't expect that necessarily, but his play didn't drop off at all. And, he did what he had to do on the field and in the practice room and in the meetings, presumably. So maybe he's just kind of that work hard, play hard type of guy.
Plus the whole thing with Brandon Williams, like being deathly serious that why the hell did he sit out against the Browns?
It's sort of reminiscent of, I'm not even caught up on
I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, yep. I'm not even caught up on The Last Dance right now, but it is kind of reminiscent of that MJ, Earl's a Jordan guy.
Intensity as a teammate. Yep.
Intensity as a teammate, intensity in just everything he does, just, kind of burns it at both ends. And this time it wound up burning him in the ass a little bit, and he's going to be paying the consequences in his personal life. But just as far as a Ravens perspective, it doesn't seem like it's really going to affect things too much.
Florio put such a little obnoxious thing, and I usually think Florio's hilarious, but you see him like
he gets a little out of
Ravens seeking how to get out of 10 million, blah blah blah. No, Florio, no. They're not going to do that over a situation where he apparently acted in the heat of the moment as appropriately as he could have. Like, there's a gun, there's a woman.
I mean, honestly, probably more appropriately than I think I would have. Like, I would have freaked out.
Yeah, there's panic. That is a panicked situation. And, apparently there's a video of it and everything's fine. And then you see what we end up seeing, and this all could be different. Who knows? There can be some whole investigation, blah, blah, blah. But Earl had his birthday the other day. Nina buys him, with his own money, I'm assuming, some ridiculously extravagant pendant. I can't even think of the right word. The ones that open and have a picture inside.
I don't know.
No, it's like a
Locket.
A locket. It is a like stopwatch or monocle sized locket that has like ET on the front, and it opens and it's a picture of him and his father who passed away. And it is like this preposterously big diamond and gold locket chain. And he was like, "Thank you so much, Nina, for the gift." Like, I just don't even know.
They're definitely that couple that's like, you're at the house party and everyone's just in the backyard having a couple beers, and just out of nowhere they just start fighting and going nuts, and then the next morning they're just at brunch all over each other. It's
like something out of like Real World or like Desperate Housewives or something. I don't know. It's a crazy situation, and it was made public, and I'm sure that they're reveling in even the idiots like us talking about it. But of course it happens during, this situation where any sort of news is covered in butter and salt and gobbled up by everyone possible and completely consumed. So unreal situation, but sounds like everything's fine on the home front, and glad that they're safe. Glad nothing worse happened. It is what it is.
Yeah, I think ultimately the fact that it wound up being this kind of funny sort of thing that we can all just sort of look at and be like, wow, that is absolutely utterly nuts, is the pleasant outcome. I remember like I tweeted out the article and I was like, oh, I can't even believe what I'm reading right now. And a friend of the show, Skipjack, like tweeted back. He's like, dude, is it weird that like I'm relieved that this is what this is about? And I was like, right. It's probably a little weird, but I'm definitely relieved. So I get what you're saying. But yeah, just a very weird situation all around. It seems like it's not going to affect his standing with the team too much at all moving forward for 2020. So yeah, he just got outed in very public and humiliating, embarrassing fashion. He's going to be jeered at relentlessly by fans, presuming there are fans in 2020, and definitely beyond that when there certainly are going to be fans. This is going to follow him forever. But ultimately, maybe no harm, no foul. Seemed like it leaked pretty much on his birthday, so it seemed like he was partying, having himself a good little time, posting TikToks. So you go, Earl. Just he's doing his thing,
Yeah, go Earl, go. What the hell, man? And he my favorite picture of Earl as a Raven is him heading in for halftime, playing in Seattle. Or maybe it was pregame, and there's the sign above the tunnel from Seahawks fans that says like Earl lost a step or whatever the hell it said exactly, but like thank you, Earl, you've lost a step or something of the sort. And a guy who's always played with a chip on his shoulder, so I'm sure he's used to the scrutiny, used to all that stuff, and hopefully his situation plays out for the best. But just a weird, just going to end up being I feel like he's going to have a very strange legacy in Baltimore.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was already kind of complicated a little bit by last year, some of the stuff that went down. Like we mentioned, his play was pretty decent, but he didn't really get too involved as far as a playmaker because he just kind of wasn't thrown at a whole lot. And then obviously he had the comments heading into the playoffs and like, who are we going to be playing in the Super Bowl? And then Derrick Henry just kind of ran train all over him. Like he and Seth are running train on Nevermind. But yeah, so weird situation, funny situation, reads like the beginning to a Coen Brothers movie, which is pretty sick. And yeah, that's all I got on it.
Yeah, we'll see. And I mean, like you said, I was just a little surprised. I mean, nothing against him, but definitely didn't know he liked to get loose like he does as far as the drinking stuff and whatever. I mean, post him smoking hookah and whatever. But I mean, I remember I went to Mosaic, which is a power plant on I think it was like a Thursday night or something. And lo and behold, Steve Smith Sr. is at a table, has his own table, he likes to wear those like, I don't know how to describe them, like the like small caps that are like a small top. Yeah. and had one up there with his big chain on and was just there with like 12 people and like an empty club, just like
That's
going
sick.
off, laughing his ass off. And it was like a random night. And I was like, yeah, they all like to go enjoy themselves, especially when you get to that age. And they're guys like that have played in big games and have made their money for the most point and had the success. I mean, Earl's played in back-to-back Super Bowls, won one and stuff. So no disrespect, no hate towards, enjoying your life and living your life, but just interesting. He is a much more interesting figure off the field than I realized.
Yeah, definitely. And it does go back to like noticing the partying last offseason when he first signed. I definitely noticed he had a taste for the finer, liquor and alcohol and stuff like that. So good for him. Hopefully the drinking.
I remember, I think for his birthday last year, he took like Tim Williams and maybe Ronnie Stanley on a private jet to Mexico.
Oh, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was doing that. He was at like Secrets, I think, at one point with like Jimmy Smith and some of the younger like DBs. I was like,
of course, Jimmy Smith.
Yeah. Yeah. So he's just like getting down in the sand dance room. Good for him. Mixing it up in that nice clean water that they got there.
But yeah, we got Ben Rose jumping in. If you got a question, Ben, we'll answer it. We didn't throw one up, but always welcome. Any questions, welcome. If you have one, shoot it at us.
With your best shot. Fire away.
Fire away. But yeah, we're moving on to some schedule talk. The schedule finally came out in its entirety. And an interesting one. The Ravens obviously have their 16-0 preseason record at helm. And now we got to see the layout. They have 5 primetime games, which ties a franchise record. I think one team gets 6 usually per year, if I'm not mistaken.
I think 5 is usually the main number, but it could be 6.
Right. So
getting like 6.
They end up playing, what initially is called, the easiest schedule in football, but a large part of that is them playing the Bengals, who were 1-15 twice. So that's going to be 2-30 against that. And with, a tackle like Jonah Williams sitting a year out, recovering, coming back, adding T. Higgins, Joe Burrow comes in, year 2 of a new head coach, a couple new linebackers in there, anything can happen in those games. I don't see the Bengals going, 1-15 again, for sure. I think a 4-12 is much more reasonable, maybe a 5-11, but very weak schedule. And they play the NFC East, which has been middling for a couple of years. But I'm excited. They play the Cowboys, and that is always a very entertaining game.
Yeah, that's always a lot of fun. So I guess just jumping into it, you have week 1 versus Cleveland at 1 p.m. I feel like that's going to be a sneaky fun game. I think.
Of course.
Yeah, Browns ripe to maybe bounce back a little bit. Week 2, you go at the Houston Texans. I think that's going to be another good one. Texans at home, not to be trifled with. Week 3, I feel like, is when the season really gets going. Monday Night Football, home to the Kansas City Chiefs at 8:15 p.m. That house is going to be hopefully rocking. I guess we'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens, but that ideally is basically the game where, to me, if the Ravens are not able to win that game, the Chiefs are their daddy. Yeah. 3 in a row in this early stage. Chiefs are their daddy, and that's a really demoralizing loss either way, and it's also a huge, huge, huge statement win. So
for me, because they hadn't. So I guess like you're talking about the Lamar era, which does make sense. They would be if they were 3-0 against them, but they've also played the Chiefs twice at Arrowhead.
Right.
And the first time they really should have beaten them. So to a certain extent, I definitely see what you're saying. But yeah, I feel like those first 2 losses are maybe colored a little bit differently by the fact that they've just both been at a rocking Arrowhead Stadium. So I think it'll be an interesting litmus test to see them come to, like I said, a hopefully rocking M&T Bank Stadium.
Right. Then you go, October. So that's through September, the first 3 weeks. It's September 13th this year, a little late. October consists of at Skins, home against the Bengals, at the Eagles, and home against the Steelers before a bye week in the, I guess, first day of November. So that's an interesting little stretch. 2 road NFC East games. I think that the Ravens probably are able to shellac the Redskins, who are still a little bit weak in their offensive line, as well as, oh my God, I completely forget that Trent Williams is a 49er now. That's insane. But also their secondary. So I feel like that's a pretty easy one. The Bengals, you expect them to handle at home, but have obviously always been a thorn in the Ravens' side. And then the Eagles, for me, in Philly, is a really exciting game and will shape up to be a really good game. I think that Wentz is ready for a big year, and we'll see if he's able to stay healthy and all that good stuff. But them getting some speed back, getting healthy, making some adjustments defensively, all that good stuff is an exciting game. That's one of the ones I'm going to be looking forward to on the schedule.
Yeah, definitely just like even having competent wide receivers. I feel like we have not seen that in a while for good old Carson Wentz. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned hopefully going down to old Raljon and putting a whooping on the Redskins would be a nice confidence booster. Then you have the Steelers at home, a 1 p.m. game. They're really moving this Ravens Steelers these matchups down to that 1 p.m. time slot. It's kind of sad, but I get it to a certain.
Well, not exactly.
Okay.
Thanksgiving.
Yeah. Okay. So we can dive into that. I guess I totally forgot about that. But
yeah. So they end up going. This is tough. They have bye week after home at Pittsburgh. So their schedule is pretty. It rotates home and away through week 7 up until the bye week. Then they go at Indy, at New England, back-to-back road games. Pretty good franchises. Who knows what the Patriots will be? But I imagine at worst they're an 8-8 team maybe. That's going to be a primetime game. Home against the Titans. That is going to be a bloodbath. I'm going to predict an ass whooping of the Tennessee Titans in week 11. That'll be my bold prediction on a game. I think the Ravens will dismantle the Titans at home in the regular season. But that is the one home game in November before at Steelers on a short week for Thanksgiving.
Yeah, definitely. So you circled that Titans game there. I totally agree with you. Like this Ryan Tannehill thing, like it doesn't do anything for me. We've seen this happen before where very talented teams prop up quarterbacks who are average to not good. I think it's fair to say Ryan Tannehill's pretty average to above average, but even then it's like, how are you going to do any better with 8-8 with a guy like that? I just kind of don't see it happening, especially in a division that should be a little tougher. And yeah, I mean, it's just like, it kind of reminds me of the Blake Bortles.
Tannehill was really able to hide off of the running game and throw some great play action stuff. And credit to Arthur Smith, their offensive coordinator. When I previewed the Titans game, went back and watched all of their stuff because the Ravens had a bye week. I mean, he really draws up some money play action plays, but I just think that he was really kind of an outlier success-wise. He had like 148 passer rating on play action. I think that if he settles in, teams are able to get a little bit of a feel for it and stuff. I don't see him sustaining that kind of excellence on play action. And they also lost Conklin on the offensive line, who is probably, Titans fans love Taylor Lewan because he's like this very interesting guy. And I think he's a good player as well. But Conklin was probably their best offensive lineman. So that's a big loss for them. And I think that they'll definitely be able to shellac the Titans at home and be very lividly furious about what happened last year. And I think they'll be motivated for that game.
Yeah, definitely. So that's going to be a fun one. And like you said, ripe to just completely smack them down, which will be so much fun. Like, after all that transpired, that's definitely one that I'm going to be circling. But then, like you mentioned, week 12, they go to the Pittsburgh Steelers for 8:20, that coveted last time slot of the Thanksgiving matchups, 8:20 p.m. at Pittsburgh. So, of course, everyone's going to be drawing parallels back to the last time these two teams played on Thanksgiving in 2013, when an errant Mike Tomlin was wandering onto the field as Jacoby Jones had a sure touchdown in front of him, ran him back into the middle of the field, and he was tackled. And the Ravens couldn't score touchdowns that year, so they opted for a field goal, 1 of 5 from Justin Tucker in a winning effort. Look at your boy, bringing out the history.
And then Jacoby Jones having a classic, I think I made that my Facebook cover picture for like a year and a half.
That's an all-time Ravens.
Him digging into a turkey leg. That was an awesome game. And anything primetime Steelers is always electric. Very curious to see how they play out this year with a 38-year-old quarterback coming off of Tommy John, because this feels like they ignored, they're all in for one more year. They ignored the other route of kind of getting some contingency going, and Steelers fans very optimistic. They want one last ride with Ben. They had that great defense last year that kept them in it. They think that Tomlin did a great job. I'm very curious to see how that ends up playing out. I think they split with the Steelers in the end. I don't see them. What if Lamar hasn't lost to the Steelers yet? I see the Steelers stealing a game at some point. I mean, to count out Ben entirely is bullish and foolish.
I mean, to the people that are already automatically counting him out for this season, like I get that angle of it, but I also get the Steelers fans who are somewhat optimistic. I mean, the guy has played well recently enough where him coming back and having one more decent season wouldn't surprise me in the slightest.
And being off for a year, having that toll away from his body, I think.
Yeah, and it is a health thing, so I understand that. But if he can stay healthy, I think he can maybe go on and win like 9 and 10 games. I could see it happening. And I mean, they should have lost to freaking Mason Rudolph and Duck Hodges last year. So,
right, and I think that he'll definitely provide some better play. I think that they're kind of propped up a little bit in a weird way with some funky games that have happened, and we'll see. And maybe their defense really can keep rolling. But I don't see them being, like you said, more than maybe a 9-win team. So interesting. I think the Ravens end up splitting and walking out 1-1 against the Steelers. I think they win in the under the bright lights. So I think they might lose ahead of the bye week and then come out strong, perhaps. So an interesting divisional year this year. And luckily, no Steelers, no Browns to end the season. So in that last little stretch, December into January, you end up seeing Cowboys on Thursday night, 1 week after playing the Steelers on Thursday night. Both the new rule in the league is that if you play on Thursday, you'd only play a team that also played on Thursday or something. So they don't make Thursday teams play against like a mismatch in time anymore. I can't recall the exact rule. But so Cowboys at home on Thursday after Thanksgiving. That's going to be a really exciting game. Cowboys fans everywhere in all games always show out strong, crazy fan base. Then really, I mean, Browns, Jags, Giants, Bengals couldn't ask for a better final month to solidify maybe, an 11-5 year, something of the sort, and make a run if they need to. After a tough little stretch from probably the Eagles, October 18th, through the Cowboys, December the 3rd, is Eagles, Steelers, bye week, at Indy, at New England, Titans, at Steelers, Cowboys. So that's definitely the meat of their schedule, a treacherous part of their schedule. But what I think this team has in Lamar Jackson is the ability to win against elite teams in the regular season that they really sorely lacked for years and years. The last 3 or 4 years, they've been able to beat up on those middling teams and those mid-level teams. But now I think, under the bright lights in the regular season, they really shined. So I'm excited to see what they can do there.
Shout out to Eric, who was texting in earlier, who said, looking good fella. I assume he means fellas. He's probably smoking that sticky icky. And then he just commented, Big Ben looking shonk. So good contributions there. A comments, i.e. the Jags and Raiders a few years ago. I'm assuming he's talking about the quarterback situations. Jags, yes, with Blake Bortles. Raiders, no. Derek Carr was an MVP candidate that year before he broke his leg. And then Ben Rose jumps in. Should the Ravens have any interest in Larry Warford? Right player, wrong price, especially after the Fluker signing.
At this point, it's crowded. I would have liked to maybe see them dip out of Fluker and into Warford, who I think has made 3 straight Pro Bowls and is an excellent power football player. Just all around solid, like a unanimous top 10 guard in the league. But there's going to be a team like, hopefully for their fans' sake, the Chicago Bears, or someone who has a very sorely lacking offensive line that needs that. And the Ravens would love to have it. Not shocked to see DaCosta make at least one phone call, as he seems to always do, but it just feels a little out of the question. There have been some rumors that we said we weren't going to touch on, but some rumors floating through the grapevine that have since been denounced that maybe we see Myles Garrett potentially end up in Seattle. The Seahawks like to do crazy, weird stuff like that, and the Browns seem to really like it as well. Obviously, their general manager is known for pulling those kinds of moves, but it was some sort of Reddit thread. So maybe we get a little drama going on. I mean, there's some pretty good free agents still out there. Clowney, Griffin, some decently high-level free agents. Clay Matthews still a big-name guy. Maybe his play is not quite as big name as his actual name, but we'll see. There's still some dominoes to fall. I think a lot of people want to see how the start of the season starts to go and where this weird time ends up as stuff starts to reopen potentially and probably a second wave of coronavirus starts to hit and all that stuff. So there's still some drama left to unfold, but it's exciting to have the schedule out.
Yeah, there definitely is. So as far as the schedule goes, let's go Roger Ebert. I'm going 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, it's a really good schedule. I'm generally happy. I don't think the NFC East is overly imposing. I don't think the AFC South is overly imposing, especially, I mean, Jaguars, Giants, Bengals to close the season, 2 of those at home. That is an amazing way to finish a season. Even if
you can get it done against the Browns on that Monday night game heading into that stretch thing, you've got to be 100% confident that you can close out those other 3 games.
Right. And let's say, I mean, over the last stretch of the seasons, at Steelers, Thursday night, Thanksgiving, Thursday night Cowboys, those last 6 games, one division winner from last year in the the Cowboys lost out and missed the playoffs. Good Lord. Yeah. So no division winners there.
God, I love the Cowboys.
Unreal. Jerry Jones drafting off of his yacht.
He's just like
super yacht. Sorry, Jerry, wherever you are, super yacht.
I don't know if we talked about like their whole draft scenario. We're kind of focused on the Ravens, but like when they pick CD and he's sitting there on his yacht, he's just got that weird like shit-eating grin on his face. It reminded me exactly of when they took Zeke in 2016, and it got this like wide, like long shot of their war room, and it's literally just him, his like little old man, just up there grinning ear to ear. Like everyone else is
he just looks into a mirror and he's like, God damn it, Jerry. You did it again.
Got yourself a good old football player here. He's going to come on in there and win some football games for us.
You did it again, you beautiful bastard.
Beautiful son of a bitch.
This is such a Cowboys-friendly podcast. That's
might be the only one, to be honest. So, I mean.
Yeah, seriously. And I'm like Dak Prescott on a Thursday night in Baltimore. God knows what that could end up being. I'm really excited. He has higher MVP odds right now than Russell Wilson. He's like,
they actually give him a supporting cast, unlike the Seahawks. So
that's true. Their line is still relatively intact despite a big retirement. Seahawks drafted a linebacker.
And who else did they draft? Like, not enough playmakers. I mean, DK Metcalf is great last year, but
DK, I'm going to hammer in fantasy this year. I think he's going to have a crazy good year.
Are you going to hammer DK on DK or on FanDuel?
Fantasy
is DraftKings still around? Is what I'm asking you.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, so DK, the reference.
DK.
It holds.
Diddy Kong.
Because it's a DK. Donkey Kong.
I'm excited to see. I'm excited. This NFL season is going to shape up. I'm really excited. The fall of the Patriots is huge, potentially. And
I don't go and win 11 games, and then we're all just kind of picking up the pieces.
Let's be honest. It's Josh Allen's AFC East, and we're just living in it.
We're not personally living in it, but other people are.
We're just living in it. We're just relishing it. I'm excited for whatever the hell. The number one team in the NFL right now that I'm very confused or kind of curious, I guess is a better word, is the Panthers. I'm very curious about the Panthers. I think they have potential to be like an 0-16 team, but the best 0-16 team that has ever existed, if that makes any sense. Teddy is really strange to me. They got Robbie Anderson and they have Curtis Samuel.
Not a lot of competition there, to be fair. There's only 2 0-16 teams in history.
All right. Like one of the best bad teams of all time. Long story short.
Fair enough.
One of the best bad teams of all time. They have deep ball receivers with a quarterback that does not throw the ball deep. Christian McCaffrey is such a wild card. And then their defense is like, they didn't draft an offensive player. They have the youngest defense. Kuechly's retired. They have Derek Brown. They have an entirely new defensive line. Their cornerbacks are very strange, young. Jackson, Deontay Jackson, whatever the hell is Dante Jackson, is like their cornerback 1. They drafted Troy Pride out of Notre Dame. I think they have 0-16 potential, but could beat any team in the NFL any given Sunday more than any bad team ever.
Yeah, well, there's this young, promising kid down in Greenville a couple hours away who maybe they've got eyes for. Maybe David Tepper is one of these new age guys who's injecting young man blood into him and microdosing psilocybin and just trying to do some new things, take on some new ideas, and maybe tanking is one of them. Who could say?
Who could say? But it's a very strange the NFC South there. I mean, that's a tough division for them, and a first year head coach, and a lot of things going in a strange direction that way. Another team that I think could be sneaky good. You and I have kind of talked about the Cardinals. That's my first one. We both now have bets on Kyler Murray to win MVP. I could see him having that third year in a row, 2018, then 2019, now 2020, of a second year quarterback. But Mahomes, obviously Lamar Jackson, now Kyler Murray having, a really huge skyrocket, getting DeAndre Hopkins, them solidifying their offensive line a little bit more. They have a coach that is a little radical, but it seems like it's,
he's radical.
Right. And it seems like it's not like a bad radical. It's it's one that works. They can be an anomaly, making them a team that is difficult to prepare for. They end up getting Isaiah Simmons and a couple other really, really, really good draft pieces. So I'm really curious to see how the Cardinals play out. But then finally the Giants. I mean, I quietly like Joe Judge. That is a team that is in a division where God knows.
John Harbaugh vibes from Joe Judge. I've kind of always thought that as soon as they hired him.
For sure, that kind of, executive rather than, X's and O's guy potentially, being a decision maker and coming from the Belichick tree. So I'm very interested by the Giants. I think they have a really good defensive front now. Their secondary might still kind of stink, but the addition of Andrew Thomas plus the playmakers that they have, I mean, Saquon, let's see if we can get him healthy. And Daniel Jones, another guy who could take a leap in year two. We saw him. He definitely started off hot, and maybe that was a little bit of beginner's, whatever beginner's luck you want to call it, and then he ends up fumbling his life away. But I think that he made some really advanced processing reads and throws and some really awesome stuff at times. So I'm excited to see what the Giants can do. That's another sleeper team for me that I think could end up sneaking into that 7 seed, which we'll see now this year.
Is that this year or is that the following year?
I believe that's this year.
Interesting. I'll throw one at you then. Cleveland Brownies.
Yeah, I think Stefanski is the best coach they've had, like in my lifetime, maybe.
That's another who could say situation, but it does feel like, as far as fit and what they're trying to do, it's kind of not the, this guy Kitchens gets the most out of Baker. We maybe have a quarterback here. Let's literally just do everything to placate him and try to just build literally everything around him. It feels like it has a little bit more of a let's cater to the whole offense vibe.
They also are going to, Stefanski loves zone concepts and he loves tight ends, and they have Joku and Austin Hooper. I think that Baker is kind of familiar throwing over the middle of the field a little bit more, and I think he's going to really like that kind of offense where he can work out of some power sets and some bigger personnel. I think that them kind of maybe relying a little bit less on their third and fourth receivers as opposed to a 1 and 2 tight end, a 1 and 2 running back, a 1 and 2 receiver group. I think Stefanski is perfect to consolidate things for them. And then they end up shoring up the offensive line. I mean, their offense on paper, if Baker is able to get back into his stride and have him and Kirk Cousins are not dissimilar as far as arm talent, as far as kind of style of throw. I think that Baker's got a little bit more zip. Cousins might have a little bit more touch. I think that Baker kind of struggles to put touch on throws at times. But other than that, Baker on the move is his rookie year on bootlegs and on some of those, zone play action concepts, getting him out in space was really good. And then this past year, he was the worst rated quarterback according to PFF outside the pocket and on rollouts and concepts like that. I think he threw like 11 of his interceptions on those kind of concepts. So I'm really curious to see if they can kind of simplify things for Baker, get him back to basics, and then rely on, they have a 1-2 punch at all skill positions. Running back, they got Chubb and Hunt. That's going to be awesome for them. And then behind a big offensive line and the receivers and tight ends. So they've consolidated. I see them trotting out some heavier personnel and doing some things. And we saw how well Stefanski's offense worked for Dalvin Cook, who the Browns made now with Wills and Conklin and some decent interior offensive linemen there, might have a better line than the Vikings had, and that's dangerous, putting those guys in a one-cut system. We saw what Kareem Hunt could do, and then Nick Chubb obviously destroyed the Ravens once, so going to be tough out.
Yeah, Baker and Cousins are dissimilar in the sense that Baker would wear like Converses to a wedding in his tux, and he would just like be a total douche nozzle and try to dominate the dance floor. And then Kirk Cousins would be like one of the carpool drivers away from the reception.
Yeah, Kirk Cousins would be drinking a seltzer, like a spritzer or something, and then have one.
Get a little mint rig in there to spice it up.
Exactly, but he'll definitely enjoy the food and have a lot to comment on the food at the wedding.
Nice guy.
Nice guy. Nice dad. Good dad.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so any other thoughts on the schedule before we get rolling?
I think they've got a difficult stretch. I mean, a couple of away games. They got the bye game ahead of a couple tough games. Initial feeling is that I thought last year people were kind of underselling what this team is, and I think now because of that massive 12-game win streak, there was a little magic involved there. I think that again, I'm going to end up probably going towards an 11-5 season. I don't think it's the idea of repeat. No teams repeat 14-2. That doesn't happen. So maybe it does, but I think people are now a little bullish on like, all right, the Ravens have a chance to go 16. I'm like, let's relax here. They didn't really add veteran weapons on offense, and they lose Yonda, they lose Hayden Hurst. Probably still a net loss offensively, while their defensive front's a lot better. So I don't know, but conversely, one thing that I will say is that I think this team now is so deep and so solid that, let's say that Lamar Jackson doesn't exist. I think RG3 could take this team to 8-8 easily.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it all comes down to confidence at this point. Lamar has to be in the same or close to the same rhythm that he was in last year. Just keep the engine kind of running. And like you, I'm kind of looking at, and even before this, I think I was looking at like 11-5, a 3-game drop off from what they did last year. Pretty significant ultimately, if you look at the numbers, but just as far as overall team quality, it's not going to be that different. And really it comes down to what they do in the playoffs. In my mind, they need to get it done, win a playoff game for this to be a successful season to me. So win totals, not really that important in my mind.
Right. I think in the worst case scenario that this season could go with drama or injuries or whatever, this is still, I mean, with that 7 seed being at large now, this is still a playoff team. So it's kind of that awkward year of, not even including the coronavirus, but that awkward year of, all right, like, let's get to the freaking playoffs. Like, shit's not going to matter until we get there and see what this team can do. So it is what it is. It ain't what it ain't. And let's see if this team can, make that run. You and I last year thought this was a team that still wasn't quite ready to be a Super Bowl contender. I still kind of feel like maybe they're ready to get into a championship game. I still don't feel like they're ready for a Super Bowl. I think they just need just that one last. I think they aren't. This organization isn't the organization that just randomly pops up and goes to a championship game like that. They did it in 2000 with with crazy free agent additions: Shannon Sharp, Rob Woodson, Rob Burnett, Michael McCrary, Sam Adams, Tony Siragusa, all coming in free agency wise. That was a little different. The game was a little different back then, but I think they're this close to being a Super Bowl caliber team, and I think we see that next year. So going into this year, I'm anticipating them maybe going to an AFC championship game or something of the sort, but not quite making it to the big dance.
Yeah, I think once you kind of get to that championship weekend, it becomes a little bit of a wash, and you can maybe get lucky, a couple bounces or two go your way, and you could wind up winning a Super Bowl. So as long as they get there, then in my mind, they'll have done pretty much everything they can or they could have done. So I guess we'll see what happens. Eric chiming in, there's nothing wrong with Converses and a tux. Let me refer you to a nice little quote from my favorite fictional poker player, Mike McDermott. Listen, here's the thing. If you can't spot the sucker in the first half hour at the table, then you are the sucker. If you can't spot the guy wearing the Converse.
Is that from the Molly's game?
Rounders.
Oh, never mind. Okay.
If you can't spot the guy at the wedding wearing Converses in the first half hour, then you are the guy at the wedding wearing Converses with your tux. So
there you go, Eric. It's you.
It's tough scene. Anything else, or should we get out of here?
Last note is I would highly recommend reading the Bleacher Report article on Hollywood Brown. It was riveting stuff for me in this.
Did you write that?
It seems like I did. That's right up my alley. But It was good stuff, sitting down with Marquise Brown, talking to him. There's stuff about his story and whatever, but just giving insight into the potential that he had, how hampered he was last year, I think is something that is a little overlooked, and his ability to get separation without even hitting his top speed at the end is going to be disgusting. Him getting those one-on-one situations. And I believe that this is going to be, for me, it spoke volume. It was kind of talking about how Eric DaCosta said, hey, the Ravens front office was like, hey, Lamar, who do you want as your number one receiver? We're going to try and pair you up with somebody. We'll go get your guy. And he said, give me Hollywood or give me Jerry Jeudy next year. And to me, that says that Hollywood is wide receiver one in their eyes, far and away. And they're anticipating him being a legitimate wide receiver one this coming year. A lot of encouraging stuff in that article, and just hearing, the attitude of Lamar Jackson, the attitude of Marquise Brown, the way they're looking at the game, the way their teammates see them, and seeing how quickly they were able to have a special connection at the beginning of the season. Although Hollywood was hampered and kind of faded out there towards the end, you see it again in the playoff game. So I'm excited to see what that can become. That is my storyline or thing that I'm most curious about and excited to see heading into the 2020 season.
Yeah, definitely. That was a really nice piece. I believe it was Ty Dunn there, who's done some really good long form stuff for Bleacher Report. He's always good. Dan Pompey, who used to write for them, he's now with The Athletic, does some other good long form stuff when it comes to the Ravens and a bunch of other teams. So check out Ty Dunn's article on Bleacher Report. And I guess that's all we got.
That wraps it up for us. We will be trying to fire up some more. We took a little break there after we had a very intense draft season. But getting back into it, hopefully we get some good news. Hopefully we get some more moves coming on shortly, and appreciate you guys as usual. We'll try and get some good stuff going on in the next couple of weeks. We'll get some mailbags out and some other content. So can't wait to hear from you guys, and thanks for listening.
Definitely. If you enjoyed what you heard, please follow us on social media. You can find Spencer at Ravens4Dummies. That's the number 4 in the middle. You can follow me personally at Jake Luke. That's Louque. I do a lot of my football tweeting from the podcast account, which is at Podcast Beatdown. Go ahead and leave us a rating and review wherever you're getting your podcast. If you're on iTunes, go ahead and leave us that 5-star rating with a review. Check out the YouTube channel for some of these episodes that we're going to be posting, pretty much most of them. And then maybe going to be trying to do some other video content we've been discussing some different streaming platforms and stuff. So a lot of ramping up going on here as we head into summer very soon. Really appreciate you guys listening, and stay tuned for later this week. And hopefully next week, going to be having a pretty good draft related guest to break things down for the Ravens, familiar face. So, we'll leave you with that tease, and have a great couple of days until we talk to you guys next.
See ya.
Peace.